What's up, everybody? This is Phil Gilliat, and you are listening to the Muscle and Flow podcast. Ready?
Yep.
All right, everybody. We are back for another episode of the Muscle and Flow podcast. I have one of my fellow coaches and good friends. Is it Dr. Chad Becnel yet?
Not yet. 1 year.
I still have
1 year.
I still have a little bit of you can't throw the doctor at me yet.
I'm not going to throw it at you either way.
Well, if we bring him on a year from now, it'll be Dr. Chad Becnel. Right now, third year med student. But yeah, Chad and I wanted to bring Chad on today because we've had this conversation a lot, just unplanned in the gym, comes up, and it's always a good conversation. It's one I relay a lot to my clients and members, and it's something I see a lot of. And it's the concept of always going into any type of fitness or training program, or when you're deciding to make that change, always kind of having the long-term mindset and thinking not so much in terms of days, weeks, sometimes even months, but always kind of thinking about it in terms of years and trying to develop those good habits to create the longevity. And I just want to I was going to ask Chad, see kind of his thoughts on that, and see kind of where most people fall short in his experiences, what some of the behaviors are that lead to success with his experiences as well, and hopefully get to share that with everybody else and have you all take something and maybe help you through your fitness journey and your goals, whatever they may be. First thing we were going to talk to, and it was funny because we were just talking about it before, and we both kind of had the same reaction when we said the term, because I see it all the time, and it popped in my head because we're kind of in the middle of the year right now where everybody had their New Year's goals. They had that quick drive motivation, and some people might have fallen off at this time. But it's the famous, we've all seen the ads for it. Some of us probably signed up for it. The 6-week boot camp, the 6-week challenge, the 6-week change, the magic results in 6 weeks. And Chad, I'm gonna turn it over to you and kind of see your thoughts on when you see that pop up, because in the fitness industry, it's inevitable. We come across it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, like we were talking about mostly in like January or so. But it plays to psychology, so it plays to, everyone wants, it's good to have goals and it's good to have them time bound, and it plays to the favor of to a consumer if you have a short-term goal and you promise a result. So if you have like a 6-week program and, you from start to finish, you get to see X amount in 6 weeks. But like we were saying, I think that a 6-week program, the best 6-week program, is going to give you the tools to build habits to continue that for 6 weeks. So it really shouldn't be bound by 6 weeks only. It should be, this is 6 weeks that is going to sustain you for 12 weeks and 18 weeks and so on. So if you draw that endpoint line, you can continue that endpoint line into the future until, you achieve this next goal, because, it's all about goal setting, and the 6-week program is going to be really attractive because it gives you some type of goal. It already gives you something that you don't even have to make up yourself. It gives you a 6-week goal. But I think that it kind of pairs with some negative aspect because it a lot of these programs come with promises that are, maybe achievable in 6 weeks, but should be approached from a longer term scope.
Yeah, I think one word you used like right when you opened up was psychology, and it kind of popped in my head now, kind of the marketing side of it. And I think they're offering that quick, cheap, easy process. And I think a lot of times people are very drawn to that. They want something quick, they want it easy, and then also I feel like what they're selling is the result. But what people should be seeking is the process. Because if you're truly looking for some type of change, the process and the habits formed during that process are really where the change is going to occur. It's hard to just be like given a result or something, or even something that quick. It's hard to develop habits that are going to last a long time and kind of adjust your lifestyle. Especially if you're talking about someone who maybe has been like inactive, eating very poorly for years. 6 weeks isn't enough time to kind of counteract that. And I think what as a coach, what discourages me from those are I want to see people come into the world of trying to change their lifestyle. But if you're promising them results in 6 weeks that may be very hard to do and they don't get that result, it's almost like this immediate like failure, and then they're out.
Yeah, I think it's expectation management at that point too, because like the expectation of anyone who's coming in doing this program is that it's this crash lifestyle change that's going to happen, and I think that that's the common like attractive understanding is that you have this big, the thought is that when you change your life, it has to be this big stand on a mountaintop moment that you decide, put a pick in the ground and say, this is it, I'm changing my life. And for some people that's the case, but I think that, habits are formed small and are gradually started, are graded, so you start small. So having someone who comes in and is looking for a lifestyle change, the first term in that is life, which is a long thing. Yeah. We're trying to prolong it. So if you come in with a lifestyle change, it's really tough to measure it in a 6-week litmus test because, the real end point of that 6-week test is much smaller than the expectation of this grandiose change.
And yeah, you're talking about the grand change, and then you started talking about the small change, and that's really where it all starts. A lot of times when people find out that you're a trainer or you write meal plans or you're just involved in the fitness industry, they ask you like, what's one thing I should do? They always ask like, what's something I can do? And it's not one thing. It's this just sum of like so many just small decisions throughout the day that don't seem, I think you used the word grandiose.
Yeah.
I like that, so I'm gonna steal it.
Yeah.
So it's not this one grandiose thing, but it might just be adding 5 decisions that could be: 1, getting an extra hour sleep a night, drinking an extra glass of water each day, maybe removing one food that we know is kind of a poor food choice, and then maybe adding another food that we know is a good food choice, and then just being more consistent with, say, your whatever gym or fitness methodology you're doing, whether it be CrossFit, yoga, spin, but consistency is the key to that. And I mean, consistency is one. Now we're going down the action. So I'll let you talk about how important you think consistency is, and I'll follow up on how I feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that these habits that you form in any type of program are something that, you sort of have to make if you want to make it a lifestyle change, it has to be a part of your lifestyle. So those types of very small measurable changes that over time become just par for the course. It becomes like what you do. But building up to that, to sort of retain some consistency, I think the most important thing is to have, whether it be a coach or another person or just some type of self-awareness, like an increased level of self-awareness of what things are struggle points, because developing these types of habits are going to be tough, and developing any habit is tough. I mean, like, going back to psychology, that's something that, we're habit forming creatures, no matter if the habit is good or bad. But even developing one that's difficult is going to be something that you need guidance from. Either, if it's somebody like us who at the gym, we can help people in lots of different ways. Or, if you go to a physician and you're trying to get lifestyle based counseling from that side, those are the things that I think, having a support system to be able to identify those hard stop points. I was reading the other day about smoking cessation, and that's a obviously bad habit. And on average, at the least, like the studies that give it the least amount of leeway, it says it takes between 5 and 7 attempts for the average person to quit smoking. And then like the CDC says it takes like up to 20 times. So that's data driven information about habits that are addictive or habits that we've formed that are very, very difficult to break. And so when you sort of fold it into the realm of everyday life and finding some dietary change or some exercise change or something like that, I think that like gaining some awareness of like what your behaviors do really influences the consistency. Because if you start becoming more comfortable with like looking at your behaviors and looking at things that you maybe don't necessarily like about the behaviors you have, you gain that awareness, and then you gain the ability to control those things. So like controlling the controllable elements of your diet and what you do have control of and what you don't.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think one thing that you mentioned that popped in my head pretty quick was you talked about the importance of self-awareness. And I think that is where people really struggle with. And not in a sense of like, not that they're like purposely not lying. I'm trying to think what the best word is. Not that they're purposely trying to make it seem something different. I think it's just truly just kind of a lack of self-awareness in the sense of they don't know the importance or don't hold themselves to a standard of like the little things. And I'm talking about people across the entire spectrum, from people who it is like their first day in the gym to maybe even like elite level athletes that might overshoot their own abilities, that think they're better at something that they may need a little more work on. Because I know a lot of times when I'm doing follow-ups with my nutrition clients, specifically, I think self-awareness is lacking with how they eat. Because the first thing I'll do to when I bring on a new client is we'll go through like what's an average like 3-day rundown of your daily just food log, and we'll go through it. And they're not really giving me the average 3-day. They're giving me like the greatest 3 days ever. And as I'm kind of writing everything down, I look at it and I'm like, I don't know if this doesn't seem like it's the average. So I feel like if this is 80% even, we wouldn't really be having this conversation. And then I start talking about, and then as you kind of ask or poke a little bit and get more questions or ask more questions, they're like, well, I get hungry, a little bit between like breakfast, lunch. There's donuts at the office, or I keep like these bars in my drawer. And then as you start asking more questions, you start getting more information. And like, that's where the little bit of self-awareness comes through. Or the other thing too is with your consistency as far as, like I always say, like whatever you do for your training, whether it be CrossFit, spin, yoga, boxing, you can be a member of a gym, but not all work sessions are created equally. So for just kind of telling like, just because you have a membership, it's not going to be the same as if you're going like 3 to 4 times a week. Mm-hmm. You have to put in that effort, where a lot of people sometimes will sign up and they'll be like, I was doing boxing for like, 6 weeks, but I didn't really get any change. But yeah, you were a member for 6 weeks, but you might only gone like once or twice. And I think one thing I advise people to do is create a calendar, like a big calendar that can get put on the board, and you have like certain objectives where, say, it's just something as simple as like, if you didn't make it to the gym that day, you put a red X on that day. If you did, a green check. And then at the end of the month, we'll get an objective like way to look at and visualize something very blatant. Obviously, if there's a lot of red, and you might think you've been going a little more frequently than you have, but you have to kind of objectify it, and holding yourself like accountable. That's going to be ultimately how you reach your goals and get towards that. But I definitely think self-awareness is what's lacking. And kind of the example I used is how I go about with people who are first starting. I mean, I think it's even there with like elite level athletes. For those people who don't know, Chad and I have both competed at the regional level in CrossFit. And You have people that they'll, I mean, I think I might be guilty of it too, where you look at a workout and you're sitting there, and you're like, yeah, I'll be able to hit it this hard, do it in so many sets, so many reps, so fast, and you're just not really aware with yourself. And then sometimes we don't like to admit that we struggled with something, so then we start reaching in the excuse book, and that's like the worst way to approach a problem. Like, it's okay to be bad at something. In fact, everybody's going to be bad at something. It's how you react to it once you find out you're bad at it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that it's sort of the lens you look at it through too, is because like a lot of this stuff is like, for whatever reason, like making change is always viewed in the negative scope. So like, any type of change is a lot of times viewed as negative, and this is all change for the better, and it should be positive. So like, if something happens where a hurdle is not jumped over in the grand scheme of like, if you miss a day at the gym, let's say, like, it's viewed as super negative, but and maybe you did miss, but if it was a tough day and you had the kids or you had a long day at work or something like that, that's okay. Like, let's use that instead of looking at, I would say look at it through a positive scope of like, okay, let's see what we can change about that for next time. So like if we go into a workout and it is, I thought I was going to do this and I actually went 5 minutes slower, like, instead of pulling those excuses out, let's actually take a look at it and say, okay, instead of an excuse of like, oh, the sun was in my eyes, well, I had poor nutrition today, or like, I haven't been working on this, like, let's use it as something to build on. Like, it's a building point.
Yeah, and then going back to kind of what you said is, it's all about the scope which you look at it, and that kind of brings us back to that long-term mindset we had. So if you're viewing it in this broad scope over the course of like, that's one day over whatever 365 times 5 is. I was going to try to do that math in my head, and I just failed.
I would have loved to hear that.
5 years times 365 days. Yeah, it's not as big of a deal. But if we're still only thinking in those like 4-week mindsets, then it can beat you down mentally, and to the point where now you're discouraged, and it keeps you from, you now have this negative mindset towards the gym. And mindset's so key, and I'm kind of glad that was a good transition there, because for anybody that's followed things, that if you've read the Muscle and Flow blog or things I post on Instagram, I talk a lot about mindset. And I think a lot of times that term gets misinterpreted when I talk about your mindset going into the gym or your training. And I think people think what I mean by that is this like jacked up, like stomping on the ground, ready to just run through a wall. And that's not really what I mean by mindset. I'm more talking about like having the appreciation and being very happy with the ability to go in there and do that, and enjoying the process. So when I talk about mindset, I'm more so talking about creating this positive attitude towards what you do and enjoying it. Because if you're not enjoying it, then long term, we're not even going to have that kind of, like, if you're not enjoying the first like week, then the long term concept's just out. Because it needs to be one of the things you look forward to each day. Like, I know when I first started, like what got me into it, I was at work. I was working just a desk job at the time, and I was like, I'm sitting there looking at the clock, and I just couldn't wait to get out of there. And not every day I was going in there ready to like I was talking about, just punch through a wall. But there were days just like I just got in there, and it was just this association of just being happy with being able to get in the gym, my time, do what's better for me, like physically and mentally.
Yeah, I think that's like a big key too, is that like mindset of like going in. There's this author, John Gordon. He's like, all of his books are about positivity, and one of his big things is viewing things through, you don't have to do something, you get to do it. Yeah. So like, you don't have to go to the gym, but you get to go to the gym. Like, and
that's how people need to think about it.
Yeah, and so like that's a change, and it sounds cheesy, but like the the true, like believing in that, or believing in like framing things positively, it's not like false hope. It's not like false, just like, false optimism of like, oh, I'm just going to be positive about everything. I mean, you can still be real if you had a tough day, but like frame it so that, I like to say everyone's busy, but it's got to be a good busy. Like you got to frame it where you're busy, but it's good. Like that's what you want to be doing. And if it's not, then maybe that's when you look at your stuff that you're doing and saying what can change so that I have more fulfillment and joy. Like what can change so that I have more. And that's kind of how it sometimes can get that wheel turning toward, a more healthy lifestyle and something that, looks like passion and mindset and
because just to kind of clarify, I think, because I know I've used the term healthy lifestyle a lot since we've been talking, and really what I mean by that is healthy mean more like happy, like enjoying what you get to do, whether it's like training, like time with your family, friends, like that's what I mean by the healthy lifestyles. Improving yourself like physically and mentally to where you're as positive as you can, because we talk about positivity, asking someone to be positive 24/7. There's no way. Like shit happens, man.
That's not like
shit's gonna happen. Life's gonna kick you in the head a couple times, and then it's how you react to it. And so that kind of goes back. One thing I want to talk about now is where we're talking about the mindset going in and having that appreciation for what you can do. Is now when you go into it, when someone's going into this, they've set a goal for themselves, they're ready to start, and they're getting into that process of day 1, day 2, day 3, and I find there's two things I always kind of go back to. Like there's motivation and then there's purpose. And purpose is that reason why you're there. And the deeper the purpose, the more you're going to get out of it. Because the deeper the purpose, the harder it's going to push you through those days that are like difficult, whether you did have a long day at the office, maybe, one of your friends or you got in a fight or something's just dragging you down. That's going to be what pushes you through those difficult days, where motivation might have that quick kick, that spark, but motivation comes and goes. At least from my experience, I find like motivation comes and goes. There's those days where you might watch Rocky. That montage gets you pumped up. Right when the movie ends, you're driving to the gym. You got the Rocky soundtrack playing, and it got me thinking about how you need to have the better we can create that combination of motivation and purpose. Purpose not just being that intrinsic drive, but the knowledge to create the habits to make it a long-term process and then create longevity. That's the recipe for success. But often I find people only have that motivation. And kind of what we were talking about before we started here, we were talking about David Goggins. And he just got done his book tour and was doing podcasts. And before I go into this, I want to say David Goggins is a badass. That dude, the stuff he's done, it's incredibly impressive. I read that book. I got pumped up. There were days I was in the gym struggling. I was like, David Goggins wouldn't quit. Like, let me try to get some of that motivation from him. But that doesn't work every day. Like, you're gonna have that day where you don't have that little bit of motivation, or it's gone. So then we need to tap into that other driver. And I feel like that's where some people, they haven't found it yet. It's not that they don't have it. I think everyone has it. It's finding it. Mm-hmm. And once they find that and they can combine that with the motivation, so then we have the intrinsic drive, the knowledge to create good habits, and then the short spark. That's what creates that sustaining fire that just stays for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that like the reason that these types of things, like when you try to make a change, the reason it's easy for the first couple of days is because that's, I think, when motivation is high and your purpose, the purpose hasn't necessarily been really founded yet or rooted yet.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's why like after day 4, 5, 6, 7, you start like life starts getting in the way and there's other things. And it's just because like everyone kind of, the way that we think, we just have other stuff that catches our attention. And so like, talking about that fire, a fire reference sort of thing. It's like, motivation is sort of like, a fireworks display. Like it's loud and bright and
catches
hot,
your attention,
and it catches your attention,
catches others' attention.
Yeah, but then it's gone. And I think that like your purpose and the reason that you do something is like that sort of like furnace. It keeps. It keeps burning. It's consistent. It's always there, and that's I think
it serves a bigger purpose. Than the fireworks.
Yeah, and I think that's like the biggest. I mean, I think that's a good like mental image to take about that, because like when you have something that is more or less bright and shiny and loud and in front of you, like it's going to be attractive, but when that ends, what do you have left over? And I think that's where it kind of it's really important.
Yeah, and that the furnace that was a great analogy. Now I'm thinking of that furnace being and the furnace being the process, and why the process is so important is some things aren't meant to be quick and easy. Some things aren't meant to be fireworks. And I think creating a change in your healthy lifestyles, going back to what I said, healthy lifestyle being the way you kind of approach life in the gym, out the gym. Not everything, if you're trying to get that change, it might not be meant to be quick. Some things aren't meant to be quick. I don't think it's meant to be. And I go back to thinking to other things where when someone, I mean, there's stories where people, they win the lottery and then they just blow it, or they have nothing to show for it within like 5 to 10 years because they were given the quick firework display, but they weren't able to develop the habits that got them there that's going to make them stay there. And I think that's what people need to focus on more, is the process, not the result. Or even the same thing. Say you appreciate something more with the process. Like if, we're both Saints fans. So say the Saints win the Super Bowl, like when they're holding up the Lombardi trophy, they don't care about the trophy. Like that trophy is just symbolic of like from day one when they showed up to preseason to where they're at now and all the work they put in.
Yeah, that just reminded me of there's this like Stoic philosopher. His name's Alan Watts, and he has this like really, really good analogy for like a journey. And it's like, the point of a song is not the end of the song. Like the point of a song is not just, because if it was, then all we would be listening to is just crashing cymbals. Like that's all we'd be listening to. Like a symphony would just be crashing cymbals and that in one note. And it's like, on a journey, like the reason that like music is so good is that like it develops and it ebbs and it flows, and it's like, it is fast and it's slow, and it's like basically this like big analogy for like any type of process or journey. And I think that it really applies to, any type of change that anyone's going to make too, because, that's really the way to look at it. And if something goes wrong or something goes poorly, it doesn't mean it's over, And so I think that that like having a long-term goal, but not putting the blinders on to only say that if I don't do everything perfect to get there, then I'm not going to get there. Like you can have stepwise goals along the way, but they should all be additive. Like that's the thing. It's like having that horizon with like little checkpoints along the way, and failures being viewed in a positive light. And you combine all that, and I think that's what really makes for a more healthy decision-making process, habit-forming process, etc.
Yeah, I think that sums it up. So just can't stress enough to people that when you do decide to make some type of change or go into living like a healthier lifestyle, try to go into it with this long-term mindset. Don't get caught up in all the short sells, the magic programs, the lose 20 pounds into it. Like if they worked, nothing else would exist. Because I would go do that if that worked. Yeah. But like I said, always think about like creating good habits, getting as much knowledge as you can throughout the way so you can start to begin making some of those decisions yourself, and then finding that motivation, that short-term spark, finding that intrinsic drive, which is kind of that big log that's going to create the long sustained burn. And that's really where you're going to get that recipe for success. So I want to thank Chad for taking time out of his day to talk with me. Like I said, we always end up having great conversations in the gym that come up out of nowhere that I wish I had the microphone on recording.
Just in between sets. It's always how it works. It's just talking about
I know I had to pull him away from his wife and kid. He had to clear it with them first, but it was okay because I cleared it with my cat. So
that's right.
Our schedules added up.
Yeah.
But thanks everybody for listening. Hopefully you got something from this. This is the Muscle and Flow podcast. This is our next episode. I believe I have planned coming up in a little bit. I'm thinking about doing it. I'm doing a competition in June in Denver. So I'm going to try to do one from there. If one gets announced before then, y'all will be the first to know. But yeah, go check out muscleandflowfitness.com where you can download this podcast, read the blog post. You can check out our weekly workouts and all the information you need for Muscle and Flow Fitness. So thanks again to Chad for taking time out of his day, and thank you guys for listening. What's up, everybody? It's the Muscle and Flow podcast after show. We're with Chad Becnel. Going to ask him a few questions, just firing off the top of my head and see what we get.
A little outro.
You ready, man?
Yep.
All right. So, who is your favorite Instagram follow? If you can only follow one person, who you going with?
Okay. The one that pops into my head, and this is not, this is very much on brand for me, is it's at Dad Says Jokes, and it's like daily dad jokes, and they're really funny. I mean, they're not really funny, but that's kind of the point.
Do you have one off the top of your head you can fire
I'm
off?
going to pull one up. Let's see. Okay. Why do bees have sticky hair? Because they use honeycombs.
Oh my god. We're going to have to go to the next question.
I know, you were
on that.
asking me that one.
Yeah, oh my god. All right, well,
All right.
With that wonderful joke, we'll move into the next
Go
one.
follow.
Go follow. Is it at Dad Jokes?
At Dad Says Jokes.
At Dad Says Jokes.
It's not me, I promise.
All right. If you could be on any reality TV show, which one would you be on?
So, I don't know if this is a reality show, but it also assumes that I have a prerequisite skill set, but I would love to be on Top Chef because I watch that show. That's like it's like probably the only like reality show that I watch. And it's not really a reality show, it's like more of a competition, but like this stuff is so cool.
You bragging about your cooking skills
right
now?
No, that's what I'm saying. I also want to assume the ability to cook like those people. So that's the one that I would say because I don't watch a lot of like the reality shows.
I'm literally the complete opposite. One of my biggest guilty pleasures is like just trashy reality TV.
Yeah.
Like I know way too much about the entire cast of the Jersey Shore. Like all the way from episode 1 to like what they are currently doing at this moment.
Well, I mean, if you caught me at almost 10 years ago, I'd have said Jersey Shore, no doubt.
I think that would be my answer.
I mean, I used to love that show. I mean, it's not on anymore, but it's apparently come back.
Yeah, you're talking about the cooking show. I watch Chopped,
mm-hmm.
and I find I'll sit there and critique these professional chefs on their like I know nothing about cooking. I'll sit there and be like, I think he undercooked that salmon.
Yeah,
I don't know if he undercooked the salmon or not.
I start assessing their flavor profiles. I'm like, tarragon, really? Tarragon?
Or he didn't transform the secret ingredient well enough.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean that's what I would want to do. Is I would also like that skill set. So maybe.
So you'd be on Top Chef, just cracking dad jokes.
Top Chef, dad jokes.
All right, this is my favorite question. If they made a movie about your life, who would you want to play you? Not in the sense of like they have to look like you, but who do you think could grasp your personality?
I think this one covers both because I've been told that I look like this person. But also that it's partially because of like demeanor. Neil Patrick Harris.
Oh my god!
I've been told that I kind of look like him, and on How I Met Your Mother, like my sarcasm is very Barney Stinson-esque.
I wouldn't have like guessed that, but now that you said it, that's all I There is no other answer now.
Yeah, so that's I
agree with that completely.
Do it. It's Neil Patrick Harris. It's got to be it.
All right. So, dad jokes, Top Chef, Neil Patrick Harris.
Mm-hmm.
Nice, man. Well, thanks for coming on. Hopefully, the next time we have you on the show, it'll be Dr.
That's right.
Chad Becnel.
That's right.
And if I don't call you that, you be sure to correct me.
Yeah, that's what I'm supposed to do. It comes within the fine print of our degree. Is that, hey, when people don't call you doctor, you have to.
I absolutely will correct everybody. And
no, I'm not going to do that.
Judging by the sounds of the knob trying to be turned, I think Chad's son's trying to come in. So
Sam's trying to come in.
We're going to call that the end of the after show. If anybody's hearing that. Thank y'all again for listening.